Well, great day and welcome to Spirit in Mind, where we discuss current affairs with faith and mental health perspectives. I'm Bishop Guy Robinson, and I am so glad to be with you today. And of course, we welcome and are glad for Dr. Shepard being with us, my colleague and co-host. Good day, Dr. Shepard.
Hey, Bishop. Good day. How are you, sir?
All is well. I'm doing what I hope our audience will be doing, trying to do this technology and share Spirit in Mind with as many persons as possible. So I trust that even you will do the same. Good afternoon to our Spirit in Mind audience that is and family that is joining in. So grateful. Sister Selena Allen, grateful to see you, and others who are joining in on the other stream venues, which probably is a good segue. Talk about some other ways you could watch us. Of course, Dr. Shepard, what are some of those ways and how can they get in contact with us?
Absolutely. I'm sharing too, Bishop, as I go along, and you can share on your social media pages. You can go to my page. Let's go to spiritinmind.vidflex.tv first, where you can go and catch up on the episodes. You can definitely go there and watch previous episodes. And we've been dealing with the ability to endure, the power to endure. And you'll want to catch up on those episodes. But here's where you can reach out to me, and you can follow me on these social media platforms. You can go there right now and share and be able to let people know about Spirit in Mind. And we're thankful for that. And then Bishop's information is here. Please go to those platforms on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then even reach out to us via email. And we'll do our best to make sure that we answer those questions that you may have. So thank you for watching, and thank you for those who have joined in already. And thank you, Monica Gross. And I'm not sure who Ravens 4800 is, but thank you. Yeah, that's our Periscope. Oh, come on here, Periscope.
That's Elder Alvin Richardson.
All right. Wonderful. Charlotte Green, Kimberly Evett. And thank you. So we appreciate all that you are doing in promoting this platform.
Yes. And today, again, we're going to talk about continuing our series on endurance. And so if you know anyone who is going through a particularly challenging time in one area of life or another, please invite them to come join in on our discussion as we talk about endurance. And that'll probably be a great segue into talking about what we're celebrating today in terms of Happy Juneteenth to you as well, Monica Gross. And that'll probably be a good parallel discussion because certainly we have endured and overcome a lot in the history of this nation and as relationships and race relations and things go. And so we're looking forward to getting right into it. And we're really continuing. So again, if you missed previous episodes, you can check in with previous episodes and visit those forums we mentioned, get caught up, because this is a continuing list. I'll just run through so you can catch up a little bit, but we talked about some recommendations for endurance based off of the International Sports Sciences Association. And we talked about envisioning success, which means visualizing where you're going, see yourself conquering, see yourself graduating, see yourself settling for that new home and settlement, see yourself at the end goal before you even get there. Engage the mind. What you think about while you're in the endurance process can help you get through. Encourage yourself. And of course, that's the idea of self-talk and what we say to ourselves. And there are scriptural references for each of those. And then pace yourself, which means, are you in a sprint or a marathon? What different tactics of endurance, depending on your obstacle course, if you will. And then we ended last week with check your friends and your circle. We talked about Job and his friends who sat with him and ministered to him, and just by their presence. And then we talked about at the end, God saying, when they started talking, they didn't speak of God what was right. So who has your ear in this season is really critical. And that's where we left off with those 5. Dr. Shepherd, I don't know if you had any reflections. I know we've had a week to reflect or additions or on those first 5 before we continue. Please help us out.
My reflections would be in line with what is happening today. Today is Juneteenth, and it really is just in line with the new federal holiday that was signed this week. The new federal holiday, Juneteenth, or I should say Juneteenth is a new federal holiday, and it was President Biden's choice to sign that into law, and Congress approved it. Bishop, I'm kind of struggling a little bit, I'll be honest with you, because, and again, it does tie in with the whole endurance piece. When you have a group of people who sign into law a day of recognition, because that's what it is, it's a day of recognition and acknowledgement that slavery was abolished in this country, but yet continue to perpetuate policies and procedures that promote the enslaving of people, whether it be not necessarily physically, but economically, emotionally, and I would even propose mentally. That bothers me. It really does. And we as people of color have had to learn how to endure even when we know that something was abolished. When you think about Juneteenth was really a recognition of a day that the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation was written, I believe, in 1861, and President Lincoln signed that. But it was over 2 years before the people in a part of Texas, San Antonio. I can't remember if it's San Antonio, but it was a part of Texas that did not know that they were free.
Yeah, Galveston. Yeah,
Galveston. That's right. It was Galveston, and that just, Bishop, I know you can take that and work a wonderful message with that. You signed, sealed, you've given the papers that you're free, but you don't know you're free.
Right.
That in itself really speaks volumes, that you can be free and not know you're free, or be freed and not be able to act or even act as if you're free. So again, I'll leave that alone.
Yeah, because there are forces of adversity that don't want you to know that you're free.
Yes.
Because they are benefiting from your bondage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what's continuing today. And that's what bothers me, because you have a Congress that would have, and I'll use the word audacity, to sign this into law, but yet will not allow for voting rights to be sustained in many of our states, looking to figure out how to be able to marginalize voting rights of people of color, the same people who they want to acknowledge slavery was abolished, but yet still continue to keep them down. That bothers me. And so today's discussion, as we've continued the series, this teaches you on how to be able to endure even when we have been done wrong. See, that's the thing that I really want people to understand. We're not just talking just to be talking. We're trying to help you to be able to endure even when there are facts, there are things that are put in place that are meant to keep you down, but yet you still remain firm without yielding. That is really the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. Let me just say this, Bishop, is this a little digression here, but I was at a shop in Ellicott City yesterday, and a white gentleman came up to me. I mean, was just so bubbly, and happy Juneteenth. And Bishop, I wanted to something rose up within me, and I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. I was about to say, what do you mean, happy Juneteenth? This is not a happy occasion to recognize that I've been free." I understand, and again, I know that I have people out there. I even have sometimes colleagues who watch this, so please know I'm not coming for anybody because of their race, but I want people to understand that yes, I'm thankful for the recognition and the acknowledgement, but this is not a happy day. This is not something that we go around celebrating like, this is a time of acknowledgement, recognition of what we have gone through regarding these years of slavery. I'll leave it alone.
No, it really does fit, which is why I said they kind of parallel, because today is that now federally recognized holiday. And yet at the same time, it reminds us, you raise some of the tension in this enduring struggle that has been part of our experience historically as a people in this nation. And so it was Dr. Martin Luther King. Here's a statement of endurance, who said that the moral arc of the universe is long. He stop right there. He says, but it bends towards justice. It eventually gets there, but it is a long process that people who are in pursuit of justice have had to endure. And so that's where it certainly fits. And part of the endurance, and I appreciate and thank you for raising your own struggle, because I think you tied into the struggle of many to say that, okay, acknowledge this part of it, but the other policies that would inform and make it more than just a day of appeasement, but would make it a day of empowerment. So that not only do we know our history, but but others, particularly larger demographics in this country that have been beneficiaries of injustices that were historic, so that they know just how far we've come and just how bad it was. And that's the part where you get pushback. That's the part where it goes into a kind of avoidance strategies, all kinds of reasons not to teach it. So how do you celebrate Juneteenth, but not really go in depth of talking about the horrors of the North Atlantic slave trade, or the basic premise of critical race theory, that there are injustices that are systemic. And so how do you not talk about those things? Because if you don't talk about those things, if you don't talk about the disparities in incarceration, if you don't talk about the disparities in treatment under the law and in due process, if you don't talk about eugenics and the disproportionate treatment of people of color, if you don't talk about those things that are ingrained into the system as normative, you certainly really can't have a full appreciation for Juneteenth or any other day. And your point is duly noted, that celebrating the end of human bondage and dehumanization is a low bar.
Right.
Right. It's by definition subhuman. It takes you into the negative numbers.
Right.
And so to recognize humanity of another human being is a low bar. And so there certainly is some validity to that position as well. And so that point of how long do we endure this, and how do we navigate between celebrating a moment of progress, a low bar, but again, is up, my math teacher, we were in the negative numbers. So with 0 is what you celebrate. You really have to be in some negative numbers.
Right.
Because equal now, okay. And I'm just talking about equality in terms of a philosophical concept. We can't even talk about equity yet, which is a whole different conversation. But how do you celebrate progress of any type, such as the Juneteenth federal recognition, and honor the people like Ms. Opal Lee, who worked so hard to with this goal in mind, walking from Texas to DC in 2016, and now in her 90s, getting to see her work come to pass. So how do you honor those moments and honor the efforts of the people like Miss Opal Lee, and celebrate progress while at the same time keep pushing to say this is not a place where we should be settled and think we have arrived. We really got to deal with disproportionate incarceration. We really got to deal with our education system that skirts around these kinds of things and issues. We have to deal with the fact that some people are really ignorant to the horrors of what happened, and without having that sense of context of what we're capable of, then we're capable of repeating it.
Yep.
And so all those things have to be. And how long do we have to deal with what some people call white fragility? But how long do we have to deal with trying to package this uncomfortable discussion in a way that appeases your discomfort without totally how long do we have to do that? How long do we have to couch that in language? So all of that is still a low bar and part of the challenge of that long arc of the moral universe. So for us, it really has been a test of endurance. I close with this section, but and it's not unpatriotic when we do that as a people. It can and has been argued that nobody, no group of people, no demographic is more patriotic than those who fought in literally every war, from Crispus Attucks to the war, so-called war on terror. People who have fought in every war in the history of this nation for principles that they did not personally get incorporated in. So people put their lives on the line and gave their lives for principles that weren't a part of their common everyday experience. Wow. But they believed in the potential and the principle. So we're really fighting on two fronts, fighting adversity, both foreign and domestic. Wow. And so that's something. So it's not unpatriotic, but we got to keep pushing the point that, okay, we'll take this celebration because that helps us to get through endurance, is to celebrate small victories. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's important that we not settle and not allow those who would try to settle. And we got to keep saying thank you, but admittedly, this is a low bar and we can go higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, well, first of all, thank you for those who are watching, Maxine Rush and Dr. Patty Johnson. Yes. And Rhonda Hayes, and there's some questions out there, and she's asked some very good questions. And Rhonda's asked, do I think that the person was being disrespectful or acknowledging the fact that we finally have it as a holiday? I can't answer that particular question. I don't know the man's reason for saying that. I would argue that he probably was not being thought he was not being disrespectful. It's just I wasn't ready to receive what he was saying, knowing how I view this particular holiday. So I hope you hear that. So even though someone may have a certain way of celebrating, that may not be the way in which I choose to celebrate. And so the way in which I heard that, that's why I didn't say anything to the man, or I didn't go off or whatever. I just said thank you and kept moving. But I recognized the feelings that I had within me that it was not a celebratory moment. It was something that I did not say, wow, let's celebrate, let's get down and have a party or whatnot. Let's rejoice. That was not where it's a very sobering moment for me. Now, that's how I choose to recognize it. That may change, as I get older, or I get even more knowledge. That's so. That's to answer that question. Then the other question is she says, how should we celebrate this day? A lot of vendors are coming out today at the park today to celebrate this day, and everyone again is different in how you will celebrate Juneteenth. I would say that this is a day to educate yourself about what happened to our people during the time that they were enslaved in our country. This is our time to read books. This is our time to educate our younger generations. This is a time to educate those who desire to be educated. I can see, going to a museum of history, being able to reflect. This is a time to gather people around, talk about different traditions and different things that have been passed down from generation to generation about celebratory moments within Black families. That's how I would choose to celebrate. I also would just recognize too that again, this is a time when people were free and who didn't realize that they were free. So I would even talk about that. Um, one of the comments that our engineer is mentioning, there's a difference between celebrating and commemorating. Absolutely. Commemoration is something that you are doing in recognition of an event, whether it be sad or happy. Celebration tends to be more of a Bishop, I was going to use the word joyous, but you can even celebrate a person's life. And as you celebrate, you tend to have more positive and more uplifting moments and inspirational moments. But yeah, there's definitely a difference between commemorating and celebration. I don't want to stay there too long, but I think I can even draw a line to our next point in regarding to endurance, because we're going to talk about faith. And I think that that's a great way about checking your faith, because faith has a lot to do with our belief system. And so your belief system has a lot to do with how you choose to celebrate and or commemorate. And so I think that that's a nice segue therein, Bishop. So why don't we start there about checking our faith as a way to endure?
Yes, absolutely. And maybe I should, as we do that, I want to add that I see a powerful comment. D.L. Hughley said that everything that has happened, I think that's Sister Allen, said that everything that has happened to us as a people has been happened to us is always turned around as our fault. That's an important thing to acknowledge in the context of part of the endurance, as part of what we're enduring, in that but blame the other kind of avoidance strategy. And so that's part of what we have to deal with. It's in critical thinking. And that's why it's so important that we be critical thinkers, as well as spiritually led, of course. But in critical thinking, we call that a straw man argument. And we've dealt with a lot of that on these subjects. A straw man argument is putting words in people's mouths and then attacking what you said they said as if they said it. And so it's like building a false argument. And that happens a lot. So you'll hear because don't forget, a number of Congress people voted against the Juneteenth holiday. 14 congressmen, I believe, changing it into something that it wasn't intended to mean. Phrases like stay woke and critical race theory. And you hear straw man arguments, things that are not part of what we're suggesting, and then putting it in the conversation as if the error is on us. and then attacking that argument that we never argued. That's in classic. That's a fallacy of a straw man argument. We have to be able to pick those things out and identify them, and to be honest, not fall for them. And so this is all part of the endurance piece that we're talking about. And so how do you celebrate? I thank you, as we move on, Dr. Shepherd, for saying that it may take on different contexts of commemoration for different people. Certainly, it's important to educate. Certainly, you may want to take a moment to have a moment of reflection, and that's commemoration, bringing it into our conscious memory. Remembrance in the ancient Hebrew word literally means to make the past present, to remember, to reconnect it to active memory. And so the idea of commemorating is this idea of remembering the sacrifices and the tragedies and the victories. And so it is. So for some people, it may be commemorative. For others, other persons choose to commemorate that. There's a number of Black-owned businesses that are operating not just for $1, but are opening on Juneteenth because it's part of what the struggle was for, so that we might have not just equality, but economic equity. And so even right here in Baltimore, there's the Dovecote Cafe that's opening today on Juneteenth after being closed down during the pandemic, but intentionally chose Juneteenth as a day to say we're back and we're surviving. There's the company in Houston, Actively Black, that is a athletic apparel line by a Black Christian male, actually, who puts a portion of every sale into mental health advocacy. That's the Actively Black Athletic Wear Association gear company. And so I encourage you, I'm not getting any solicitations from them. It's just making the point that there are people who are intentionally opening up on Juneteenth to make that point, that this is about also, especially after we just also recognized the Tulsa tragedy and what happened in Wall Street. And there is certainly a trigger that something about equity and economic prosperity seems to trigger those who have racist ideologies. And so there is something to be said for those who choose to commemorate by way of showing socioeconomic advances in our community as well. However you choose to do that. The Actively Black is the name of the company, the athletic gear. Somebody asked about that. So if you look up that, and so that's just, again, that's not an endorsement because of any kind of paid compensation. It's just things to keep in mind that we may commemorate or celebrate differently and not to put each other down. So it matters on where your faith is. Endurance is a matter of faith. That's the number 6 in our endurance piece. Check your faith. I say that because, and then Dr. Shepherd's going to help me out here. Research suggests that certain expressions of faith can increase our coping skills and reduce the effects of trauma. I'll say that again. Certain expressions of faith, emphasis on certain expressions of faith, can increase coping skills and reduce the effects of trauma. There's been research to show that belief in adversity, or if we believe that adversity has been ordained or allowed as a means of strengthening, it's been found helpful to endurance and recovery. The research has found that if my faith system says I'm going through a rough season, we're dealing with a rough patch, or this has been a long season of struggle, those whose faith system believes that, if you will, it's a test. As Bishop Larry Todd used to say, it's only a test. And so if we believe that it is a test or a strengthening, developing experience, then it increases or has been helpful to our endurance. That same study showed, Dr. Shepherd, that if we believe that God has abandoned or is punishing us, it was found to make endurance and recovery more difficult. So what you choose to believe can literally affect our ability to endure, meaning what we believe about God specifically. Viktor Frankl called this logos therapy. I call it the ministry of the why. Frankl, inspired by Nietzsche, said, if you can discover or come up with a reason why we're going through what we're going through, it gives us strength to endure how we're going through what we're going through. And he said that brought him through his experiences as a concentration camp survivor in World War II, that he that has a why, a faith system to believe that even our suffering, theology calls it redemptive suffering, which means that my struggle is not in vain, but I'm going to be able to exchange this cross for a crown. And so this idea, if we can believe that suffering or the struggle is redemptive at some point, that it's not meaningless, that it's not in vain, if we can believe that there is a redemptive end to the struggle, it can help our endurance. On the contrary, if we believe that there's no reason, it's random, it's pointless, all those kind of things, it can really hinder our ability to endure the process. So purpose gives us strength to endure process. That's my requote of Viktor Frankl. But Dr. Shepherd, that's why your faith system matters, at least according to some research by the American Bible Society, and that they supported and funded to have research done. And Viktor Frankl from his personal experience, who was a psychiatrist. But help us out here, Dr. Shepherd, in the mentality of faith in endurance.
Absolutely, Bishop. I was just looking and thinking about some things you just said about purpose gives you strength to handle process, and it may not be exactly how you said it, but that's the message I'm getting from this, and understanding that we must check our faith, and that it is what allows for you to endure. Remember that endurance is remaining firm in the midst of suffering or misfortune without yielding. And if you think about how do you remain firm when you're going to encounter misfortune or suffering without yielding, there must be something there to remain firm on. How do you remain firm or you don't yield when you don't have anything backing you up? That just won't happen. You have to have something within you that must be rooted, or you must have your belief system rooted in something that when you go through the misfortune of suffering, that it doesn't waver. It's like an anchor, if I could. You think about the anchors that are tied onto boats, and when the boat is rocking, when it's docked, and the waves are still lapping, the waves are still occurring, but there's an anchor that's keeping that boat steady, not allowing it to sink or not allowing it to even wander off. It doesn't have to sink or just move course. And that's what faith does. I really, Bishop, sometimes think that, Lord, and the disciples asked that question, Lord, well, not really a question. They asked, Lord, increase our faith. We really need to ask God to increase our faith, especially coming out of a pandemic such as this. One of the reasons why check your faith, and I'm speaking the way in which I am, because so many people believe that they are rooted in faith, but when the test comes, you see that they can't handle anything. And you know, Bishop, I want you to tackle that. So, does that mean that their faith is weak? Does that mean that their faith is not non-existent? Um, I can't answer that for you, but I will say that in order for us to know, in order for us to check your faith must be tested. Anything that's worth having, anything that is going to be the foundation of your ability to remain firm without yielding, there must come tests to see how strong it is. I was just dealing with my aquarium system just before the show started. And you all heard me talk a little bit about my aquarium some weeks ago. And Bishop, I just found out, oh my God, I was devastated. I just found out that the fish in my aquarium was sick. I didn't know they were sick. But the person who handles the specialist came, he comes every month. Oh my God, as soon as I saw it was full of ick. Ick, I-C-K, is a parasite. And I was like, oh, okay. I see the fish every day. I feed it, think everything is and I did have some tragedies, some dead fish. I didn't understand why they died. Now I found out why, because they were sick and I didn't know it. Shepherd, what you trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is that the parasites that were on the certain fish, and there's one particular fish right now I'm kind of concerned about. So he treated the fish, and when they get treated, he has to take them out of the tank and put them into fresh water. I have a saltwater tank, Bishop. And when he puts them into the fresh water, actually the parasites blow up. It's interesting. So it's kind of marks all over the fish's skin and stuff. I was like, ugh, I wasn't ready for that. But it's helping them. But what he told me, he said, Dr. Shepherd, what you have to do, and here's the point, when the fish are sickened with the parasite, they can maintain even when sick if they're healthy enough and being fed enough so they can fight off the parasite. Wow. I said, well, what can I give him to medicate? He said, no, you can't do it. The system that you have, you just can't put anything up in there because it could destroy what you're trying to do. It could destroy the type of environment that is trying to set up. Man, I hear the Lord now. But if you give the right nourishment with the food, it will help to fight off the parasites. And that's what I'm saying about your faith. We must feed our faith. We must increase our faith. Faith cometh what? By hearing, and hearing the word of the Lord. How are you going to talk to me? I'm just getting practical now, that you endure and you can't take nothing. Oh Lord, I don't want to get in trouble here. But wait a minute.
No,
you can't say that you're a person of strong faith, and yet every little thing bothers you, every little offense, every time somebody gets on your nerves, you blowing up. Let me tell you, just like those fish, I'm praying to God that those fish can make it through. And what I have to do is I have to continue to nourish them properly so that they can handle the parasites. We're getting hit by parasites every day that strip away our nourishment, that strip away our mental well-being. That's how it connects to your mental well-being. There's things that will drain you mentally. I ain't talking about physically now. They drain your mind. They weaken you to the point to where when it comes time for that anchor to get rooted in that faith of what you believe in, and understand that in the midst of suffering and misfortune, I can still trust God, and yet it pulls and you haven't been nourishing yourself, it's hard to get a grip. It's hard to get settled. And that's what I'm concerned about. I'm ending here. That coming out of this pandemic, there have been so many people who've allowed this time to wear away their faith, to let down their guard, to let down their belief system. Oh, it don't take all that. Well, let me tell you, you're right. It don't take all that. It takes that and much more. That's what it does. And we want to make sure that we're not allowing the parasites in our lives to pull away and eat away at our faith.
That's I'm going to stay with your wonderful analogy and illustration. Elder shepherd right there. That was the elder coming out. So I'm gonna stay right there with the fish, because as Dr. Hayes has pointed out, even the fish need a doctor, and so that's a powerful illustration. I'm going to stay with that as we talk about feeding our faith. Imagine if there was someone else in your living space who also had access to the fish. And as you were putting in things that were nutritious, somebody else was feeding them things and providing other options in the atmosphere, to the point that the fish developed an appetite for the things that were being fed by other people.
Wow.
Then the problem now is that he's eating from too many tables.
Yes.
He has too many physicians or too many pastors. Too many people speaking into your life, bouncing from one streaming service to the next service streaming to the next service streaming. We have so I'm saying that because you said faith comes by hearing. Well, really, Paul said it, but you quoted that. But faith comes by hearing, connecting clause, and hearing the word of God. Because both clauses are true. Faith comes by hearing. Whatever you can entirely allow to have your ear, you'll begin to invest faith in. And so now it has to be specific, that hearing the word of God. And that's where this conversation about your faith system and endurance begins to tie into what you talked about last week, where endurance requires, or sound doctrine strengthens endurance.
Yes.
And so now, and that's how faith ties in, because what we put our faith in matters as well. If we put our faith in the wrong diet, in the wrong doctrine, in the wrong ideology, then when our experience does not meet our expectations, then the pain follows, because pain is a monitor of the distance between experience and expectation. So when we allow unsound doctrine to establish our expectations and experience comes out differently, then it affects our ability to endure. So last week we worked with that premise that sound doctrine strengthens endurance. But Paul also reminds us by his message or missive to Timothy that there is a culture out there that will no longer endure sound doctrine. And one of our family, Spirit of Mind family members asked that, well, what is sound doctrine? I'm just going to stay with the scripture in the Koine Greek. Endure sound doctrine. Anekomahi hujaino didaskalia. It's been a while since I took my Greek class, but what that means, endure sound doctrine, means to hold up and hold on to with patience teaching and instruction that is healthy, reasonable, and applicable to life situations.
Wow.
I'll say that again. That's the literal translation of the Koine Greek. To endure sound doctrine means to hold up, hold on to with patience, teaching and instruction that is healthy, reasonable, and applicable to life application. That means it's something that when I'm going through the storms of life, I can apply to help me endure the seasons and struggles of life. So that's the literal transliteration of enduring sound doctrine. But Paul says to Timothy, there's a part of the culture out there, and an age is coming when people will not be able to hold up and hold on to sound, healthy teaching and make the life applications to it. They'll hear a sermon because they want itchy ears. He says, but they will after their own lust, epimutheia in the Greek, which means their own passionate desire, urges based upon strong feelings. The text says, after their own lusts, they shall heap upon themselves, which means collect and go after and gather a multitude of teachers having itchy ears. That means they'll go after what sounds good instead of what is nutritious to get through the cares of life. That's why I said, and it said they will heap them up. So to stay with your analogy, imagine if someone else were in the house for the sake of conversation. Let's say it's me. And after you are feeding something that's nutritious, I come and dump in the tank something that's gives a moment. Oh, this seemed like it's good, but I'm really polluting the fish. Then Timothy says they'll start to heap that on. So imagine if after a while they don't want what you got anymore. We want Bishop Robinson.
Yeah.
He's gonna make us feel good in this moment, even though what I'm bringing has the parasites in it.
Right. Yep.
And that's the challenge. That when people will want to hear what affirms their lust. That's what Timothy is being told by Paul. Don't get mad at me. I'm just on the text. It says they will no longer endure sound doctrine, but after their own lust will heap upon themselves teachers who say what they want to hear to scratch their itchy ears. People will want to hear what affirms their lust. Do you live your best life? If it feels good, do it. You're wonderful. You're glorious. Humanism, secular humanism, all of that kind of stuff. It sounds good. It scratches the ear. Losing their endurance for healthy, sound instruction. And as a result, they lose their ability to endure the challenges and hardships of life because all that stuff doesn't apply and doesn't work to give them endurance. So they experience what one commentator called it, the result of having itchy ears and a bad diet creates adaptive failures, which means my expectations are not being met and my coping strategies are not adapting to my situation well. And isn't that the language of substance abuse and other concerns? It's I'm trying to cope, but what I'm using is creating an adaptive failure. I'm unable to adapt. It's not working. It's almost like when, and that's how we can think of adaptation and trying to cope with life in some ways. It's like levees that try to hold off the storm, but it's not that there's no levee. It just means that the levee is insufficient for the caliber of storm. And so when you don't have sound doctrine, the levees are more likely to break when the storms of life come our way. And so that's just why your analogy was so very powerful, because your fish are overcoming obstacles because they have healthy diets,
right,
and a healthy caregiver.
Right. Absolutely. And you got to make sure that even with the parasites being in the water, and you know what caused the parasites, that I introduced some new fish. You know, that's what he's telling me, introduce the parasites to the system. And you know, there's a period where I could have quarantined the fish, but there's a lot of debate about that, whether or not before adding something to the system. But something's, you know, worth said about that is when you are adding to your systems or whatever they may, systems of work, systems of church doings, things like that, you need to be able to test it out. And even in testing it out, sometimes you may get a parasite. But when you have those vitamins and nutrients that are added to the food to build up the person's immune system, then they can fight it off. And so that's what we're trying to do. And let me just harp a little bit on the definition of sound doctrine that Bishop just gave. And I hope people heard that, because unfortunately, people don't know what sound doctrine is. They think they do, but they really don't. If you listen to what Bishop Robinson just stated, sound doctrine is teaching and instruction that is three things. It is healthy, it is reasonable, and is applicable to life's, or applicable to life. I just leave it like that. That's what I just picked out. It is healthy, it is reasonable, and is applicable to life. So when you're looking at doctrines that people are giving to you, asking for you to uphold, and asking for you to follow, asking for you to be a part of, if it is not healthy, if it is not reasonable, and if it's not applicable to life, you need to question if that is sound doctrine. And that's where so many people get confused. Well, Dr. Shepherd, how do I know it's healthy? How do I know what's reasonable? How do I know what's applicable to life? I just heard you out there. I know, I heard you, because some people say things are healthy and they're not really healthy. That's why you have to make sure that you understand what good standards are. That's why you have to know the word for yourself. That's why you have to read the Bible. If you think about for medicine, there's a set of standards that are placed that all physicians, I don't care what type of specialist you are, have to abide by, because we go through the training. And as you go through the training that you receive, and I pray that you're in a biblical, Bible-based church, a good faith-based organization that's teaching you well. But you have to know, again, for yourself as you go through this life's journey, what is healthy. All right. What's healthy for me may not necessarily be healthy for you. And what I mean by that, there's some people who can digest meat more easily than others. Some people might still be on milk. So you have to know what is a healthy and appropriate diet for you. But yet and still, even though there might be some differences between the milk and meat, there's a certain things that we all don't eat. Right? We all don't go around drinking gasoline. I'm just trying to make it as plain as possible. I don't care if you drink and have a diet of milk or if you have a diet of meat. We agree there's certain things that we just don't drink, and we don't drink gasoline. So, I sometimes get bothered by certain people. Well, we just different. We just no. There are some things that they may differ, absolutely. But when it comes to certain requirements and certain nutrients, if you're going to grow up and develop into a healthy, reasonable person, then there are certain nutrients that are required. I don't care who you are. That's how our bodies are made. And so I want to make sure that we hit that point regarding sound doctrine. Remember those three qualities. Bishop, thank you, because it's going to help me as I move forward in my presentations and teaching, that it must be something that is healthy, reasonable. And some of the stuff we hear today is not reasonable. And again, I'm not going to get into that too much, but some of the stuff I hear people saying, like, wait a minute, is this even reasonable? And then applicable. How does it apply to your life? It really ties into what mental health is about. Mental health on PCWC by Mantra. If sound doctrine ties into your ability to know your potential, your ability to cope with normal stressors, your ability to work effectively and fruitfully, and to make a contribution to your community. Sound doctrine, mental health, good mental health, hand in hand, work together. All right. So Just want to add that I'm recognizing the time. That's why I didn't go further, Bishop.
No, that's good. And that idea of healthy, and I'm reminded of Pastor Rick Warren's mantra that healthy things grow, and so does it promote your growth over time? Is one way we can monitor health. His analogy is sort of like you don't have to yell at a 3 or 4 year old grow, but if you feed them well,
Right.
they will naturally grow over time. And over time is key because we're talking about organic growth and not swelling. And that's so very important, because then that matters on, again, that's your diet. Some food will burn up quickly and then you'll crash. So you get a sugar rush. That's junk food. And mama used to say, don't eat the junk food before dinner because it'll spoil your appetite. What she meant was it'll make you think you've been satisfied, but you really haven't received the nutrients that'll help you grow. And then just an hour later, you're going to be hungry. And so you got to be mindful of things that give us a temporary rush. But then when we walk outside of the experience and we come back down, it doesn't apply to life in a way that sustains us to have life and life more abundantly. And so these are the things that we have to just be mindful of. And you'll have to determine that by your own self-reflection and analysis. And my last thing, which might be we can wrap it up, was that in terms of keys to endurance was check your faith, was the one we just talked about. And then finally, I'd say appreciate good coaching. Again, stay with Dr. Shepard's fish analogy. They had good coaching. They had Dr. Shepard who was looking and monitoring. They had the experts who were giving him counsel. And so if you got a good coach, if it's your dad on this Father's Day weekend, appreciate good coaching, appreciate good parenting, appreciate good biological and spiritual parenting. Because even if you perhaps didn't know your biological father or didn't have him with you long, Psalm 68 says God sets the solitary in families.
Yes.
Because that's part of our endurance as a people, is that we created what sociologists call fictive kin or expanded kin. God put father figures and parental figures and mother figures and church mothers who guided us. That's all coaching. A pastor who rightly divides the word of truth. If you got good coaching, again, these suggestions were in part inspired by the International Sports Sciences Association on ways that trainers train their athletes to endure. And again, here's the emphasis. It already presumes that this athlete has good coaching because your coach can make a difference. Your parent, your pastor, your teacher. And so you got to have a coach who knows your potential, who knows your weak areas, who will not just scratch itchy ears, but will tell us stuff we need to hear and challenge us to grow. Not everything that we eat, some stuff we like more than others, but a good nutritionist says you need a balanced diet and you need to hear some affirmation and you need to hear some reproof and you need to hear some challenges and you need to see what I see. A good coach will say, listen, your form matters, your fundamentals, the basics. Coach will say, you need to run another lap. You may not feel like it, but this is developing your endurance. You need a pastor who will say, I haven't seen you in Bible study. What's going on? You sing, but you don't study. And so that don't sound, it don't feel good, but it is good for us. And so appreciate a good coach. That's my closing. Dr. Shepard, take us from there, please, sir.
Absolutely. And so thank you for mentioning fathers, and we wanted to recognize all fathers out there today. happy Father's Day to you. I look forward to celebrating with my biological father, who has been a part of Spirit in Mind broadcasts. And so I'm looking forward to spending time with him. Wonderful coach. And we may have to talk a little bit about that even next week, because, you know, you need to know a good coach versus a bad coach.
Yeah.
And then you need to know how to be able to accept what the coach is saying. And just because you assemble a good team, you think about an NBA team, sometimes you can have a lot of star players, but if you don't know how to be able to pull those star players out and learn how to help them to work together and gel together, and that's where a good coach comes into play, then you have a messed up, really have a messed up system, messed up team. And I can talk a little bit about that since I'm such a Chicago Bulls fan. But back in the day when Phil Jackson was coaching three of the NBA stars, I mean, really, there was a full team of stars: Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman. I mean, you just continue to go down the line. And they all were on the, well, Horace Grant and Dennis Rodman were on the same team at the same time, but Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, how to be able to balance all of those star players and yet win 6 championships. Those three won 3 together in 3 consecutive years. But I tell you, it required good coaching. And so we may have to talk about that just a little bit more, because that is what's going to also help. A good coach will tell you when to sit down and when to move forward. I'm going to leave that alone. Happy Father's Day to all those who are out there. Happy Father's Day to you, Bishop, and thank God for you and for your leadership. And again, thank you all for watching. And yes, hit us up. Let us know. I'll just we can put those slides up real quickly. Let us know if you have any questions that you can reach out to me, reach out to Bishop. This is our contact information, and we'll happily answer questions. Thank you for those who are saying Happy Father's Day. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you so
much. All right, Bishop.
Thank you so much. And yes, I guess that good coach, a coach can either scar you or shift you into your next level. So that might be something to have a whole talk about. Yeah, wow. So I'm gonna stop right there. Thank you for the Father's Day greetings. I'm so appreciative. Thank you for watching us on Spirit in Mind, and we look forward to seeing you as God gives us grace, by the grace of God, the next time on Spirit in Mind.